Greetings viewers, welcome back to KMI Community Connect. We're going to be discussing part 11 of Metabolism Made Easy. If you recall, I have mentioned in the interlude 2 and also in the part 10 that I will be bringing about the concept of hypertension, which is high blood pressure, to sugar, which is diabetes, and also how it is linked to obesity as well as other problems like fatty liver and all. So we discussed many times that here at KMI Community Connect and Metabolism Made Easy, we are mostly going to be focusing on how to connect the loose ends, how to bring those things together and tie the knot and make the common link. So what is the common link between high sugar, uric acid, diabetes, hypertension, obesity, fatty liver, and all other names that we give for various metabolic dysfunctions? So if you recall, last time when we finished the talk, I said we are going to bring about the concept of hypertension, and for that we also talked a little bit about high insulin on repeated stimulation that the body makes from high glucose. So any constant stimulus given over a period of time to the body will eventually lead to resistance of that stimulus. I'll repeat again. Any constant stimulus given over a period of time to the body will eventually lead to resistance of that stimulus. So what was that stimulus? You remember I talked about the analogy of a subway train where we keep putting energy in the form of glucose and other foods, and then the body keeps making more and more insulin and says, I can't open the doors, and the people are stranded on the platform, like how the glucose gets stranded in the blood. So I will give a better explanation of that, because unless you understand high insulin first, which is hyperinsulinemia, I'm going to write that term here. It's called hyper, which is high, insulinemia, hyperinsulinemia. Anemia means a condition in the blood. Insulin, you know, hyper is more, that's more production. So if the body has to get resistant to something, as I mentioned before, any constant stimulus, first the body makes more. The condition is hyper. So for a long time, over a period of years, the body makes more insulin first. And then eventually it will lead to insulin resistance, which means the cells are not accepting the action of the hormone. So any repeated stimulus, repeated glucose spikes, for example, repeated glucose spikes, I would call it as RGS, repeated glucose spikes, will lead to repeated insulin spikes, because glucose is a stimulant of insulin. Repeated insulin spikes. And with the analogy that I gave, I said the body gets tired. That means the insulin is knocking on the door to open the gates for the glucose to go in, but the cells are becoming numb. They don't listen to it because you're stimulating it so much that the cells are trying to protect the body and say go back. So anything that constant knocking on the door, the cells are becoming more numb. That's why you get resistance, and the body wants to make more and more to overcome that resistance. So I will give you a nice picture. Hopefully you will appreciate this, and this works with every hormone in the body. That's when you understand how metabolism works for being in equilibrium, and how metabolic dysfunction starts. So let's talk about, let me put a representation here. I will try to be putting a straight line if I can. This is the amount. When you see, this is the amount of anything, production of any substance in the body. I will give you an illustration. And this is the time. So if you see, I'm actually putting a line here. So time means years. Our lifespan, age span. So I'm going to put time here in terms of years. That's time. And then this is the quantity of whatever you talk, whatever I'm going to represent here. So let's start with how this thing starts, this insulin resistance pattern I can tell. So let me represent first glucose. If you go to your physician and check glucose all the time, which is a consequence in the blood, you will see that the glucose levels are like that over a period of time when you are young, and then slowly starts creeping up a little bit like that, up a little bit, up a little bit, up a little bit, up a little bit like that, and up a little bit. Now I'm going to, sorry, I broke this line here. Now let me drag this line a little bit more here, and if you imagine we can call this as a few inflection points where there is a change happening. You can see this change here happening. Let's say this is between 30 years of age or something like that. So I'm going to put that inflection point for you to understand when that happens with a dotted line here like that. See? That's the inflection point. Slowly that's going up, if you appreciate it. Very subtle. And at that point, that means the glucose is slightly going up. And this is when you see, I'm going to represent the insulin in red. It comes like this and it goes up like that. See that inflection point? And the pancreas is making more to keep this glucose down. And this is the inflection point of insulin. So the red is actually insulin. For your convenience, I'm going to name this here very clearly so that you understand. This blue line is glucose and the red line is insulin. So now what is happening? It's slowly going up, so the insulin is creeping up. You see, follow this blue line. This is glucose going up, insulin is going up. Up, up, up. Sorry, let me just second. Up, up, up. Now this is going up, and then it will go up and up and up and up and then go to the peak like that. It goes up, goes up, goes up, and goes up to the peak when the glucose is going up and up and up. And from here, there's another inflection point that it will go up. So when this peak happens here, and when the next inflection point happens here, the body cannot make any more insulin and it drops. See this inflection point and this inflection point, it drops, it drops, it drops, it drops, it drops, it drops. While this is going up, the glucose is going up, 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 like that. Now, so if you see the next inflection point here, I'm going to put one more. This is the first inflection point when it is making more. This is the second inflection point when the glucose keeps making, body keeps making more glucose and the insulin drops. You see that? Now when this is happening, you are calling this stage here as pre-diabetes and this one as diabetes, because I will explain to you why you call that as pre-diabetes and all. This is high insulin. This part is the hyperinsulinemia, high insulin, and during that time, this takes many, many years when it starts making more and more. And during that time, your body is what is called as, when it starts making more and more, at some point the glucose goes more. So this area from here to here is the time when you are developing insulin resistance. This is the time when you get insulin resistance over a period of time. First hyperinsulinemia, then insulin resistance, and the cells don't accept it. What are those cells? It first starts in the fat cells, simultaneously almost the same time in the muscle cells. Then it spills over to liver, pancreas, everywhere. And when that happens, you call it as diabetes. That means the sugar is coming back by then. It's too late. So the insulin drops. Now, if you see, I want to keep it here like that for your appreciation, that even though the insulin drops, you still make more than where you started. You still have a higher insulin, and you still make more, or in some people you make less depending on the genetics and ethnic variation, but you are still making more, but less than what it happened. And when it drops and it makes less than what it was before, that's when you call diabetes, because the body cannot fight anymore by making more insulin. And this is the inflection point where the sugar goes up, the insulin comes down gradually, and at this point you call it as diabetes. So this is the type 2 diabetes that they are calling here. Now, with this understanding, I will kind of not go too deep into that, but I want to bring in the concept of hypertension, because I said that high insulin. So in the beginning, before even the glucose goes up, and we call it as diabetes, around this stage when you have high insulin, what does insulin do? High insulin, first thing what you have is, if you notice anybody who keeps challenging their body with more insulin, the first change that happens in them is retention of sodium and water. How does that happen? The body, insulin acts on the kidneys. And by now, a lot of you probably know that somewhere kidneys are related to high blood pressure. If you are not in the medical field, or if you are not in the science field, you know that kidney either can damage the insulin can damage the kidney, or kidneys get damaged during production of high salt or salt intake. And some people probably don't even know that, but the consequence is kidney problems, heart problems, and brain problems and other things. So most of you know that high blood pressure can cause kidney damage. But the most important thing that we all have to remember is kidneys handle sodium. Sodium, I pull it as Na, that is sodium. And sodium is very, very important in the body for determining the pressure in the blood vessels. Because when you make too much insulin, the insulin goes and acts on the kidney, and it starts retaining more sodium. So the kidneys handle your sodium balance in the body. So when you make more insulin, even before you get diabetes, when you are eating foods and all, you can see that there is a transient increase in the blood pressure for a few hours, and it comes down. So more insulin, more sodium retention in the kidney. And I will explain this to you next time because of lack of time for this part. More sodium, when you retain, water comes along with it. I'm going to put this water with blue, that way remember, always remember, water follows sodium. When sodium comes into the blood vessel, water follows, and your blood volume increases and blood pressure goes up. So that's the first thing that I want you to appreciate before I go into more details about how this happens next time, going into the science of what hormones play here. So high insulin, high sodium retention, high water retention, and more blood pressure. That's the first thing that happens. I'm going to put a formula for all those people who are very interested in science and medicine and molecules. I'm going to put a formula, not to confuse you, but to appreciate what are the things that are related, because these are all not separate. This is just the glucose, sodium, blood urea nitrogen, which I talked about, uric acid, and how kidneys and all play a role in this. So I will put 2 times Na, like I told you, is sodium, plus, and I will put here blood urea nitrogen, that is blood urea nitrogen. You remember uric acid divided by 1.8 plus, don't worry about the formula, just look at what is in there. This is urea and nitrogen, uric acid. This is all coming from the kidney, urea and nitrogen, and the uric acid from here, because there's a connection between sugars, uric acid, blood pressure, kidney and all, which is where it's made. And the last one is the glucose, which is the sugar, divided by 18. Now what is this? What is this formula? This is what is called as osmolality. Osmolality. What is osmolality? Osmolality is nothing but a simple mechanism where the molecules, sodium is a molecule, urea nitrogen is a molecule, glucose is a molecule, and it tells how many molecules are there in the blood, and that means the concentration, and that decides the blood pressure and everything, all the symptoms that we have. So it's the concentration, the number of molecules that are important. With this, I'm going to stop. I want to make it easy for you, not make it too confused, reintroduce these topics and expand on it next time. And so please remember, here at KMI, we are always trying to get you the best of medical information at no cost to you. We are about translating the science of longevity with no cost to you. I'm sure there's nobody who doesn't like that. I'll see you very soon.